Joe, where you going with that filibuster in your hand? Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is Fox. Chris Wallace saves Joe Biden from total debate knockout by President Donald Trump. Right, I forgot the camera today, so today's on the phone, so hopefully the camera doesn't fall down and the audio's alright. But yeah, so basically watched the debate last night. You know, it pretty much aligned with what was expected, at least by myself. And, you know, basically, as many other people, the kind of general consensus is that Joe Biden did better than expected, right? We kind of set the bar about 2 inches off the ground, and he cleared a good 3.5, to 4 inches. So, not an outstanding performance, very weak, very exhausted, trying for dear life just not to, slaughter the lines that he had memorized. I can only imagine the amount of prep they put into this and, what sort of brain boosting stimulants they gave him, because it was you got to give him a little bit of a golf clap for not completely just falling apart and just breaking down. But, and Trump, it's funny because this has really always been my opinion of Trump since the beginning, is that, I'm an English major, okay? I appreciate eloquent thoughts. I appreciate structured arguments and, coherent form. I debated competitively in high school and performed very well. My debate partner and I came in second place in the regional debate tournament on our first try. And so basically it was good. We had the thrift store suits from the 70s, and it was always pretty fun. But I appreciate argumentation. I appreciate receiving arguments against me. I appreciate it when people actually can give me a coherent argument against what I am claiming or what I believe, because I'm interested in the truth. I'm interested in building my own knowledge and wisdom. And so if somebody proves me wrong, it might be a little embarrassing for a moment, but in the end, I am increased. I am made greater as a result of being proven wrong and realizing my error. And of course, I would consider that to be a positive mentality. I would say that all the people that I personally look up to, both live and dead throughout history, were people who acted in that manner. But for a lot of people, it's just I just want to confirm my own opinions. We all have confirmation bias, but the question is whether or not you make at least a coherent and occasional effort to check your own thought process and examine your postulates and presuppositions and say, is what I'm claiming really true? Is what I believe really true? And, a lot of the stuff I put out there in these videos might seem like they're very wild and out there, but literally I'm always checking my own thought process. I'm always, scanning the system to see if there's some error that I've made. And, I'm sure there's always errors that all of us are making that I haven't discovered yet, that we haven't discovered yet. But, again, it's through argumentation, it's through discovery, it's through science, it's through, the true free press and free media to examine everyone and examine the facts and really come to a greater understanding. And that's at least what the media used to be, and what it still is in the alternative media. Is people basically just sharing information and trying to find the truth. But the mainstream media has now become essentially just a propaganda wing of the establishment, of the what is now called the deep state, right? And it's, what do they call it? The fourth estate. There's the church and the state and the monarchy, and then there's the media. And essentially the media is this kind of lackey position for the empire, right? They defend the empire, because if people don't hear about, wars and rumors of wars, then, they won't really ever have an opportunity to respond to it. Same thing on a micro scale with people committing crimes and doing degenerate acts and organizations that are caught doing horrible things, and nobody hears about it because it's not reported. And, for those of us who are already in the alternative media and have been for a long time, and we only interface with the legacy media almost like, tangentially and through the alternative platforms. Like, I don't have a cable subscription. Everything I watch from that is on cable, such as the debate last night, is through a live stream, right? And there's no way I'm ever going back to subscribing for a TV service. The value proposition is non-existent, okay? Even if it was $5 a month, I don't care. I don't need it. I don't want it. There's no reason for me to have it. I'd rather keep the $5 and get an extra, side of French fries at my next lunch or something, because, it's California, and even French fries are expensive, man. And I look forward to, being resilient and sovereign on land that I own, that we own, and... Sorry, everybody, phone call from Space Panther. Totally derailed my train of thought. So what were we talking about? The debate, right, between Biden and Chris Wallace against President Trump. As Trump, pointed out at the very beginning, the way that the questions were phrased were very pointed against Trump and not so much against Biden. There were a few that were sort of a little bit pointed at him, but Chris Wallace would never follow up. He would never press like he did with Trump over and over and over again, with the, it's been 4 years and you haven't come out with any medical plan at all. And it's like, that's begging for Trump to interrupt him and question that, because the premise right there is basically negative and slanderous. And, I wouldn't necessarily say that, on some replacement for Obamacare or something has been introduced, but the things that he has done for me are more important, not for me personally, but in my analysis, more important than coming up with a new big government health plan, which is, things like allowing states to purchase pharmaceuticals and drugs and whatnot from other countries and get those lower prices. It's ironic that, again, on an America First platform, that's kind of the route that we end up taking, but it is because of the entrenched pharmaceutical oligarchy in this country that has really no incentive financially to actually make people healthy, but rather, again, it's, the people who run the pharmaceutical industry today are the descendants of the British East India Company, aristocratic families who are moving opium around the world and, all sorts of different drugs, right? It's been a long, long game, and this is just their most modern incarnation. Of course, they're joined at the hip with the oil industry. Where do you think that most pharmaceuticals are manufactured from? It's from petroleum, right? Literally, yes, that stuff that covers, ducks and birds and seals on the oil spill. That's what you're putting into your body, essentially. Again, chemically manufactured and changed through various processes. But the point is that this is absolute poison that you're ingesting. You should not be eating petroleum, right? Does anybody go out and eat Vaseline when they need some extra, lipids in their diet and fats, right? Not so much, because it would probably, poison you, either, to the point where you throw up or whatnot, or, I'm sure you could probably die by ingesting enough petroleum. But it acidifies the body, and, the pharmaceutical regime is corrupt from the base, but people still believe in it. So, again, the things that I wish Trump would say, again, how as many seem to want in an infantile state, they want, like, Trump hasn't revealed 9/11 and, disclosed the UFO technology. It's like, one thing at a time, guys. Understand that you might be on that level, but most people are not. They are definitely not. And if Trump were to press too far into Wonderland, right, then it would completely break the entire game, and he would lose too many people, and they'd have too much ammo to throw at him, right? They've already been throwing everything they have at him for 5 years now. Right, it's just coming out too that Hillary Clinton essentially orchestrated the entire Russia hoax back from the first day of the DNC when the WikiLeaks started coming out. They realized how damning this was for them, and this, that essentially left unchecked, it would be an extinction level event for their whole clique. And so basically they came up with Russia, and none of it was, actual patriotic Americans and citizens of the world, accessing this information, leaking this information, not hacking it, and then basically releasing it to the world. and that, that instead they became Russian hackers who are just doing it because they hate democracy and they're trying to overthrow our democracy. So, it was either Russian intelligence agency disinformation, or it was straight whole cloth fraud, and fabrication. But the point is that it came through Hillary Clinton and it went essentially to the Obama administration. John Brennan, James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, all of this came into, and let's not forget McCabe, right? Andy McCabe, who I believe, if anyone is on the chopping block, like in a big way for, in the Durham probe, I think it's McCabe. I think the crosshairs are right on him right now. But we will see. The one thing that was very revealing, from the Trump side, it was at the very end when he said basically, we've caught them all. He was talking about the coup, and, they were asking about a transition period. Will you accept the winner of the election? He's like, I didn't get a transition period. They started out trying to overthrow me. They started with a coup, right? There was no transition. And so basically, we've caught them all. And, it basically said, we've caught them all. And that, he spoke it with a very strong sense of assurance and truth. Again, you can, when you're listening to, vibrations, you can hear basically when people are lying, you can hear when people are telling the truth, right? And again, there are times when Trump lies, he has to, because again, it's politics and people are not on the level of truth in the main, right? And so when he says 2 million people would have died if we didn't do, if you were president, right? If we didn't do the lockdown, et cetera, that number, that 2 million, as we've pointed out since back when it was literally first released, I called it that same day. This is bullshit. This is a bullshit computer model that has no real basis in factual reality. And sure enough, there was never any chance of there being 2 million deaths. But that was the story, and that was the narrative that, Trump was working with back then, that was put out by the media, the imperial media. And so basically he uses that as essentially just a justification for his decision-making, rather than calling out Niall Ferguson and Imperial College London and their bullshit computer models, because that's, again, too high above what people are ready to understand. And if he were to go down that path, he would lose people. Man, I was a Ron Paul Republican. That's exactly how I came into the conservative mindset, through the intermediary of libertarianism and anarchism, which is to say that I appreciate the more well thought out arguments. I appreciate that more intellectual aspect and of defending liberty, but most people don't. And so, Ron Paul got a great following among intelligent people who have, courage and wisdom. And basically, we've planted that seed. And then basically, Dr. Paul planted that seed and we tended it. And now we've basically cultivated a garden. And it has essentially taken over the conservative wing. It has taken over the Republican Party. Not totally, surely, definitely, not totally. They are still trying, Conservative Inc. and the neocons, to take back control of the narrative. But they will not succeed, my brothers. They will not succeed. And it is, very encouraging to see things through that light. On the other side, right, it's the commies and the socialists taking over, as Trump just hammered Biden over and over and over. The left, the radical left, will control you, and you are going to be, wrapped around their finger. And it's true. Like Joe Biden, his website says that they embraced the Green New Deal. He disavowed it during the debate, which is interesting. Again, the only way they can get by is just by painting Biden as all these things that he is not. And, they try and do the same to Trump, but everybody who is just a regular person who can hear truth and realness in one's speech and actions can see that Trump is a genuine at heart. Again, in politics, everyone has to lie. There's no such thing as total truth in politics, because it will self-destruct the speaker of the truth. Truth can be spoken, but not when you have that many strings attached to, organizations and responsibility at that level. It's not necessarily a bad thing as long as he has the good intent, and we are seeing that chronology develop of the larger, more important items being revealed. versus the smaller things, which a lot of the smaller things have been revealed. Again, people forget that the Kennedy files were released under Trump, not all of them, but enough to show that there was a bullet hole that came through the front windshield, right? Nobody picked up on that one. The Saudi Arabia influence and complicit aspect in 9/11. Of course, there were other states involved. But when you understand the deeper aspect, the differences between, say, the state of Israel and the state of Saudi Arabia are not as divergent as they are on the surface, right? But that's, again, way deeper than the average American is prepared to accept, and way far beyond probably what Trump is even prepared to articulate. So, again, people need to recognize just the real politic and the terrain of this actual spiritual war that is underway, of those who have morality and the spirit of Christ, and they are the children of God, seeking to live in peace and harmony and balance in this planet. And then we have the commies who pretend like they want all those things, but actually in their basically traumatized victim Olympics mentality, they really just want to control everyone to justify their own basically anomie and lack of meaning and purpose. And so it is very sick philosophy. It's very sick. It relies almost entirely on projection, right? Of projecting your own failures, your own sins, your own crimes onto others, right? Even as brought up in the debate, right? They had this thing a couple weeks ago of Trump called the soldiers losers, the World War II soldiers losers, and it was refuted by 21 people. It's total fake news. Never happened. There's no recording. There's nothing. And the people who were there, even the ones who don't like him, like John Bolton, said, yeah, that never happened. And then basically, a couple days ago, the tape comes out from 2016, basically of Joe Biden talking to some military soldiers, and basically calls them all stupid bastards and a dull bunch. And it's just kind of funny that they project everything onto Trump. They literally have more corrupt connections and tentacles to Russia than Trump does. Trump doesn't have any connection to Russia, other than maybe he's probably visited, and he's talked to Putin a couple times as president. But ultimately, again, as pointed out in the debate, which Biden had no response to, was that his son Hunter received $3.5 million from the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. It's like, can you even imagine if that same detail had been revealed about Trump, how that would have been held up as the damning proof, unequivocal and undeniable, that Trump is owned by Putin, right? But because it's Hunter Biden and not, Don Jr., it's basically, oh, no, that's nothing. It's fake news. It didn't happen. But it did happen, okay? The payments from Burisma, right? They did happen. The payments from China, they did happen. Rosemont Seneca Partners and Burisma, right? Billions of dollars to this kid. And he basically had no resume whatsoever, except that he's the son of the vice president, and the vice president was in charge of Ukraine policy. And so and that 3.5 million payment from the wife of the former mayor of Moscow was like a couple days before, essentially Russia retook Crimea after the almost unanimous vote by the people of Crimea to rejoin their ancient homeland, which is the Russian Federation. Right. And the idea, that Russia in that matter would surrender its main naval base on the Black Sea, is ridiculous. And anybody who thinks that they would do that is crazy. They protected their own assets in a very strategically intelligent way. Again, for people who appreciate military strategy, you really got to admire Putin and how the Russians have really played their whole situation. They're not very strong economically, but their weapons are very good, and they have, at least Putin has a very shrewd demeanor and a very effective management of the Central Asian, just clusterfuck of politics. And, people said that this debate last night was a shit show. And in some ways it was. It definitely was a lot of talking over one another. But ultimately, again, I like the reasoned debate, but we don't live in the world where reasoned debate is even allowed anymore, right? It's verboten, as they might say in the old fascist country. And people, they expect things like just illusory, big, high-minded speech, right? The Democrats who support Biden, they love that stuff. They love just that high-minded, just hot air floating out of their faces, which doesn't really mean anything, but, it makes them feel good. And they don't really have any intellectual rigor or structure underpinning their own thoughts. So just feeling good and, presidential. He sounds like he's so smart. And he sounds like such a president. It's just pablum for fools. It's just, basically, pomp and circumstance for people who basically are more interested in appearances than content. And, they cast Trump as basically this total narcissist, but really they are the ones who are endlessly poring over, appearances, right? Obama, right? They think Obama was a great president because he appeared to be a good president, when in reality, under his reign, the country stagnated and crumbled and degraded and divided, and now basically Trump, reaps the whirlwind for trying to clean it up, but that's really, I guess, the reading of it. Climate change is bullshit. Chris Wallace, can suck it when it comes to, talking about the forest fires out here in California. Trump nailed it. Forest management will solve the problem. Even if climate change, global warming existed and continued, if we manage the forest effectively, it doesn't matter. It's not going to burn down. But if we don't manage the forest, and even if we removed all the carbon in the world from emissions, there would still be fires because they're already still overloaded with fuels. And so, again, one will solve the problem in any circumstances. The other will not solve the problem in any circumstances. And so that is basically, why Trump is completely right on the climate. He's right on a lot of things. He may not be the most eloquent person in the world, but he actually does understand things on a very high level. And it's, for people who actually are intelligent, not midwits pretending to be intelligent with their degrees and from, these completely, structured and obsolete systems teaching basically, just entire paradigm of academia that is completely worthless, and then they come out of school and they wave this degree around and they pretend like they're genius, right? For those of us who actually are genii, it's very great to see Trump just kind of, wave it around and be that alpha, and not be swayed by the opinions and the consensus of fools and so-called experts. And yes, he interrupted, but it's when it's that, again, that decorum that Obama had that kept people hypnotized and kept them basically, in alpha wave brain state where they just kind of, they're not really paying attention and not thinking critically. But when Trump basically, interrupts and changes the tempo and talks over, right, he demonstrates that aggression, which on a reptilian state demonstrates that he is the leader, that he is the alpha, but also it disrupts them from getting their little hypnotic sound bites in. Because again, this is all going to become a series of sound bites, just like the last election debate, right? Because you'd be in jail, right? Wrong, all these little snippets. That's what'll come out of it. And Trump basically alluded that we are about to see some very, very interesting, indictments coming down the pipeline. And so hang on to your hats, grab your popcorn, and we'll talk next time. All right. Peace, guys.